You're listening to the Bleach Brothers podcast, hosted by B-Word and Jake.
What up, B-Word?
What's going on, Jake the Hater, Jake the Tailgater, JFM? Jake, what are you doing?
Man, I got way too many nicknames.
I know, but one of the nicknames that I want to give you is called Ponchon. You ever hear of it?
No, what is a ponchon?
All right, man. So I was out with my buddies several years ago, and we were, we were drinking. We were having a good time. We had some dinner. We were out in Reno, just kind of hanging out, doing our thing. And, of course, we did what, men do, and we got to the point where we just couldn't drive anymore. You ever been there? I've been there. And
did you Uber, or did you nobody drove, right?
No. Nobody drove. Nobody
because
drove.
there's a difference of when you can't drive and then you shouldn't drive. You get what I mean?
No. We definitely knew that we couldn't drive, and so I was actually dating a girl at the time, and I called her, and she picked us up. Right? We were at a Denny's. You ever been at Denny's late at night after having a few beverages?
Well, yeah, I have, but I don't like Denny's. But
nobody's really
that's
proud. Right? Nobody's really proud of being at Denny's, but so we ended up going over there, and so she ended up picking us up, right? And so she stopped at her house, and I lived about 30 miles away, 25, 30 miles away. And so she grabbed some clothes, and she took me back to our house, and I was there with my two buddies, and she was tired, and she wanted to go to bed. And so I was doing the gentlemanly thing, and I decided that I needed to tuck her in, right? And by tuck her in, man, I'm not talking about getting frisky. I'm talking about that I had
what
to
are
actually.
What are you talking about?
Well, good question there, Jake. So I actually had to tuck her in. So I made a burrito out of her with the comforter because, to be honest with you, I just didn't think that I was doing anything else that night. And so
because also, let's be honest, B-Word, when people are drunk late at night, all they want is burritos.
I'm going to tell you, man, food is it. Food is definitely it. So, it was cute. I made a little burrito out of her, made sure to tuck the blankets under her legs and the blanket under her shoulders and stuff. So she was basically stuck there, right? I kissed her on her forehead, and then I came outside into the living room. And my two buddies, right, love these guys to death, but they looked at me straight in the eyes, and they called me a ponchon. And I have to tell you, my two buddies speak Spanish, and I don't speak a lick of Spanish. I mean, I know how to ask for the bathroom and
I don't have a
order
linguistic tongue at all. I'm one of those people. You could try to teach me a few words, and I'll be able to say one or two things. In the industry, I mean, I work with a lot of Hispanics, but I can't. Yeah, I don't understand things very well from other languages or tongues. So
absolutely, and these are good friends of mine. So, of course, I look them dead in the eyes, and they go, "You're a ponchon." And now, mind you, I'm however many beers and shots and whatever else I'm in.
And after you made your girlfriend into a burrito,
after I turned her into a burrito,
story,
yeah, and I'm actually offended because while I when you have Hispanic friends, they you pick up the bad words, right? And so this was a word that I had never heard of, ponchon. And I'm like, What's a ponchon? Well, as soon as I said, what's a ponchon, these two start dying. I mean, they are laughing their ass off, right? They got tears coming out of their eyes, and now I'm just getting pissed because now I took you two douchebags and I brought you home with my girlfriend, and I go and I made my girlfriend a burrito, gave her a kiss on the forehead, and now you guys are calling me a ponchon? Me a ponchon? I don't even know what a ponchon is, right? And so I'm like, what is a ponchon? Well, as soon as I ask it again, what happens? They continue laughing, right?
They laugh at you more.
They're wheezing laughing, right? So finally, after it all dies down and I'm all pissed off and I'm just like, whatever, you guys are stupid. They tell me that they did not call me a ponchon. They actually called me a two-pump chump. So I go into the bedroom and I wrap my girlfriend up like a burrito with the comforter. I give her a nice quick kiss on the forehead because guess what? I was hanging out with my boys that night. All for them to call me a two-pump chump that sounded like a ponchon. So tonight, Jake, the word of the day, you're a ponchon. How about that?
So I'm a two-pump chump, huh?
Yes, sir.
So I now I'm going to call you ponchon for how long? So see, here's the problem with you, B-Word, when me and you do things. You think it's going to work in your favor to call me something.
Oh, it will.
And then like 10 episodes in, all of a sudden I'm gonna ponchon the hell out of you. And
I'll tell you what.
I'm not gonna chump you. I'm gonna ponchon you.
No, I'll tell you what. My buddy Jake. My buddy Jesse. Sorry, he's a great friend of mine. He is, one of my best friends. Lives down in Vegas. He's a fan of the show. But the one thing that he will tell you is that he will always call me a ponchon, or I will always call him a ponchon, and so that's just there. So because you're also one of my best friends, you're just adopting the ponchon lingo.
Now you made me hate it more. Like,
you should.
Like, I was happier when it was like a douche moniker. Now that it's like, it's because we're so. It's like that episode where what's her name? Winona Ryder stole your heart. Remember I told you you would never top that?
That's
just did again.
Well, see, that's the purpose of this podcast, is that I need to top every ridiculous thing that you do, because you out-ridiculous me all the time, because you do not know how to eat oranges in the desert.
I don't have a filter. Yeah, I'm a little irrational. Well, I mean, I get what you're saying though about like the whole linguistic, the bad tongue thing. I had a story one time when I went down to Mexico, or I was going to be going down to Mexico, and I worked at a high end retailer at the time, Nordstrom, and I had a friend there working. His name was Eddie, and Eddie was Mexican, and he was from there, and he's like, "Hey man, you're going down there?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go party and have some fun." He goes, "If you want to pick up girls, you just gotta say de la muerta."
Okay, wait. For the audience, what exactly are you saying?
De la muerta.
Okay, all right.
So what? I'm hold on. So I'm saying this thing over and over again. So I'm practicing, right? Because I'm not. And to get me to roll the tongue, like roll the L's and the R's or whatever they do. So I'm like de la muerta. I'm doing my perfect Antonio Banderas or whatever I can do. And I'm doing
your ponchon level.
And all of a sudden, I'm out with, we're in Vegas, and I have a few other, friends that are Hispanic, and I'm practicing it, and they go, "Jake, you know what that means, right?" I'm like, "No," and they're like, "It means." He goes, "I'm just gonna try to help you out, bro. It means put it in me."
Oh, yeah, that's not.
So I'm sitting there. And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like, I'm going to put... He goes, "No, it's not even you putting it in them. It's them putting it in you. Like, you're going to walk into a bar and go, de la muerta." And he goes, "You're just going to get some dude turn around going, no, or yes. I don't know." And I go up to Eddie, and I go to give him crap, and he just starts laughing. He goes, "Man, I really wanted you to get down to Mexico before you found out what that meant." And to this day, but it's one of those things. I've turned it into, you know what I mean, where it's like, I'll say it all the time now when I'm out. Not try for that. I'll just be like, de la muerta, because I practiced it so much. As you hear, it's the one thing I can probably say very well. And I'm probably not even saying it correctly, but I don't care. That's like the only other one I can do is in German. I can say, "Meine Katze ist kaputt," right? And that means my cat is broken. And I don't know where I learned that. I think there's a bad story behind it. I'm going to have to remember one day, but that's
man.
The German sentence I know.
Oh, man. Well, these same dudes, we were young, man. Club life was the big thing. It was where we were at. And these same guys, we had VIP in the club one night. And right. It's not my favorite thing anymore.
Club life is the worst.
Oh, it is. It's terrible.
For dudes, it's the worst part of history. Because here's the other thing, too. There's actually a uniform for it. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but when a guy goes through, especially when you're from Nevada, I don't know if, like, when you're from Boston or anywhere else in the country, if you actually have to go through this, like, initiation stage, I guess it is, to be like a Las Vegas or a Renoan or, somewhere where there's casinos and clubs. But you go through that nightclub phase, and it's not like Night at the Roxbury, you know what I mean, where the shiny... It's like you wear a button-down, jeans, you try to dress up a pair of shoes, and then, it almost looks like you're still trying to wear LA looks in your hair. Yeah,
and it honestly looks like we're showing up for court. Yeah,
it looks like you're showing up for court, like 6 months back payments on child support.
Exactly.
And you still don't know if you've been on, and you're still booked to go on Maury to see if you're the father.
Well, absolutely. 100%. So that's how I'm dressed. So picture this. That's how I'm dressed. And in this particular club that we were in, the stage the VIP is basically on a stage. So there's a couple steps up to the VIP, and the dance floor is right below. So I'm standing on the stage, looking down on the dance floor, and I see this beautiful girl. Looks like a Latina girl, dancing with her friends. And so I look at these two yahoos and I'm like, help me win her love, right? What do I say? What can I say to win her tonight? And so they tell me something, right? So I walk down to the dance floor and I'm dancing and I'm shimmying my way over to her and I'm dancing right up behind her. And I'll tell you what, man, she was interested. I know for a fact she was interested because she knew I was there and she's dancing up against me, and we're dancing and we're moving to the music. And I get the Antonio Banderas bone in my body and I'm like, "Tu quiere coger mami."
What are you asking for, Taco Bell?
Tu quiere coger. No. So I really, all I wanted to do was I wanted to ask her out, or I wanted to say she was beautiful, or I wanted to say whatever. Tu quiere coger means you want to fuck. And so what I didn't know is, okay, what I wasn't prepared for is that's what the definition of that saying is. And so I wasn't prepared for the right hook that came and landed on my face and knocked me on my ass. And these are the same two people that were calling me Panchon. So you could definitely understand my frustration with language barriers. But yeah, so language barriers are definitely fun. Definitely fun.
I'm not I mean, I feel bad because I wish I was more versed in the world to be able, like, so I have cousins from Puerto Rico, right? And I mean, they speak fluent and everything, and it's just like sometimes you just wish I was smart enough to know another. It's more about me just being smart enough and having the patience to do it. I'm sure I could learn it if I really wanted to.
Right.
I just don't. I mean, but there's things that are certain tastes too, right? Like, I love learning how to cook food, and I love learning about, like the things we talk about on this show. I guess the interest of, learning a new language, I just don't have the discipline or the want to do it more so.
Right. Right. No, I totally agree with you there. I mean, some of my really good friends speak other languages, and it's, there's multiple languages of people that I know, and I think some languages are absolutely beautiful, Spanish being one of them. But the big thing for me is that I really wish I would have paid more attention in school to some of that, to some of those topics, or at least applied myself to it, because I do think it'd be a little bit more useful today. But yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, man. The world's a beautiful place. I mean, I definitely think that the multicultural part of the world that we all get to experience, whether it's in food or languages or entertainment or whatever, is great. But today, man, I kind of want to talk with you about the end of the world. So we happened to watch this movie this week that is currently streaming out on Netflix, and it's called Army of the Dead. Right?
Yeah, I sat through that. Yeah.
So. I think you and I are going to differ here, and the reason why I think we're going to differ is because I actually like zombie movies, right? I think that
Do you really?
Well, kind of. Okay, like if we're watching 28 Days, is it 28 Days Later?
28 Days Later, not the 28 Days of Sandra Bullock. Don't make that mistake.
Yeah, that's a different one. But 28 Days Later was good. And then also, the director of this particular movie, Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder, he did Dawn of the Dead. And while these two aren't necessarily connected, even though they both have Of the Dead in the title, I thought the movie was good for what it was. It wasn't like the most exciting movie, but I loved Zombieland. And so because I loved Zombieland, I hated Zombieland 2. And the reason why I hated Zombieland 2 more than anything else is because they said Nevada as Nevada the whole time. And it just drove me nuts in the theater. But long story short, back to Army of the Dead. I liked Army of the Dead because it had the zombie aspect. I thought that there were a few good things there, but my big point of bringing this up is I want to get a little bit more on what you thought about it. I want to get Jake's take on this.
So, Army of the Dead, okay, one, I hate zombie movies. I do. Okay. There's only like 2 or 3 I've ever really... I'm not even going to say like enjoyed. I watched them, and I 28 Days Later I liked. I thought it was, okay. Resident Evil, I guess I put in that
right.
genre. I like it, but I mean, and I guess World War Z, which isn't even that good of a film.
Yeah,
it's a great book. I'll say that. I think that's why
I think it was a better book than a movie.
But I don't know. Army of the Dead, it just felt like a crappy video game made into a crappy over the top movie. And none of it correlated with me. And to be honest, okay, so, like, a side note, me and my wife, you know about this, so me and my wife do movie night twice a week. Mm-hmm. So we've been doing this since we first started dating. I'm a very regimented person. I know I'm irrational in life, but also like, you know me, I like to organize things. I'm very structured. So when we first started dating, I told her we were going to do something for ourselves. So what we do is we have a jar with popsicle sticks in it with movie genres written on it, right? Like action, sci-fi, all that. And every week on Saturday, somebody pulls from the jar. Whoever pulls from the jar, we take turns, picks the movie Sunday, and then the other person picks Friday, and you start over. And then we catalog them. So we actually have a book that we write down every movie. And the point of it is to try to watch movies that we both enjoy, things that we haven't seen before, or watch something new together. But it also gets us out of our comfort zone and thinking, well, I tried to kill two birds with one stone, and I think that was my mistake this week. So
you picked horror, didn't you?
No, we picked action. And I was like, okay, it's so, you know, and I was like, okay, it's a horror action film, right? So I was like, well, I have to do this for Brian. And I got to do this for the day. And nothing ever works out when you try to do two things at once for like the love of your life and like, you know, work best friend stuff, right? Like there's a reason there's a little bit of disconnect, right? It's not that you can't combine your friends in your household life, but there's also a reason why you take time for each thing, right? Right. So I already went into it. So my wife's like, well, what are you picking? And I told her, and she's like, why? And I mean, you know, and she knows, like, you know, I pick bad movies sometimes, but I was telling her, and she's like, so she goes, so you're picking it for your show? And I was like, yeah. She goes, I was like, well, you know, for us too. And I got the face. I'm like, yeah, sure, this is for me. This is more about your show. And she goes, okay. And my wife, the best part is, she goes, okay, we're both gonna have to sit through it together then. And I could just tell right there. Like, because she knows I don't like zombie movies. She's like, yeah, you're not going to enjoy this either, so screw you too. So we put it on, and we're watching it. And I love watching movies with my wife. It's like when I watch football with my wife or anything, I love to call you guys and give you the commentary. Right. And I know when my wife doesn't like a movie because she talks during the whole movie. And so, like, this whole movie, not only was I getting, it was like I was watching, you know, when you put in like a DVD and there's the director's commentary. This was like the commentary of somebody who gave it 4% on Rotten Tomatoes. Right. Sitting next to me of just, why is that girl in there? Why this is stupid. And my favorite one the whole movie is, why is nobody asking questions and money is not that important? She goes, everybody's just like, oh yeah, I'll go do this. Like, there were parts I like. And I guess to make this easier, Brian, after I just went down this whole path, is I'll tell you what I liked about the movie.
Let's go there.
I love the comedian Tig.
Okay.
And Tig was the helicopter pilot, right? And I remember seeing her in 2002 do stand-up, and I've always been a huge fan of Tig. So that delivery of that character was great.
Oh, I thought it was phenomenal.
I just felt all the characters was a little over the top cliche. Right. Where, you know, it's like you had to pick the tech guy. So what did you do? You made him a weird foreigner. And then you had to pick the cool black guy who, you know, technically survives the whole thing, but, you know, there's a spoiler there. He doesn't.
Spoiler, just so if anybody hasn't watched the movie, we're going into spoilers, just so you know.
I love Hiroki or Hiroyuki, who was Scorpion, and, you know, he was in Last Samurai. I think he's an amazing actor. I thought he was great as a business. I actually thought he did a good job as a businessman. And Bautista did a good job in acting. I think you said it. I know you think it's probably his best acting role.
Yeah. So little disclaimer here. Jake and I both have watched this movie, and we've done our best actually not to talk about it. But we have shared a little bit of snippets because we wanted this podcast to be authentic as far as the review of it. And the one takeaway that I actually think is a positive thing of this movie is I did think that Dave Bautista this actually showed some range for him. Now, granted, I didn't really like his character.
All you do is you run around and kill zombies. Yeah. There's not a lot of range with that B word. I mean, the scene where he's like barely crying with a daughter that's an idiot the whole movie. I'm sorry. That girl was the stupidest person ever. There's a zombie apocalypse, and you decide you're going to just run into a building like, well, everybody that is around you is dying that are professionals.
Okay. Let's hold up here, Punchone. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and tell you, Dave Bautista has not really showed his range in any movie he's been in. Period.
Yes, he has.
No, and I will disagree
Yes.
with you until the
You
day
haven't-
I die on that. Because
I'm going to tell you
you're
why.
wrong.
I'm going to tell you a movie right now, and I guarantee you that you probably haven't seen it.
What movie have I not seen?
Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, you're right there. But here we go. Here we go. Okay, so that movie, that ignoring that movie, and he probably was in it for only 2 minutes. Okay, Dave Bautista actually was able to show a little bit of emotion. He was able to be funny. He was able to have the action sequences that he's known for. And for me as a dad, like I bond with father figures in film, whether they actually be like, traditional fathers or they're a father role.
What the type of father he was. Yeah.
Right. And so I definitely understand the heartache he was going through, and I understand the emotion that he was having to deal with the loss of his wife and the way that she exited the film at his hands and in front of his daughter. Like, that's a pretty significant thing. And I thought that the way he handled it was good. But I have to be honest, man, like total overall review of this movie, I felt like this was Zombieland meets Wish.com. I thought that this was a version of Zombieland that had a lot of potential and just didn't land. And I think I'm hoping, and I'm going to watch the prequel because they have a prequel coming out with, is it Matthias, who was or Ludwig, who was the guy who broke into the safe.
The techie foreigner.
Yeah, the techie foreign guy. There's going to be a prequel for that, and I really liked his character. I thought his character was actually pretty funny, and I thought that he actually brought a spin on there. That this was a heist movie, and I know that you and I like the Ocean's 11 and those types of films, and this kind of gave me that genre in a zombie film. But I'll check out the prequels. They're also coming out with like a sequel series. I think it's a cartoon, so I don't know if I'll watch it.
Here's the problem with what you're saying though about that Matthias characters, right? The foreigner dude,
right?
He is great with counterparts in the movie,
right?
And in doses. So it's like a YouTube video, right? Like you sat with friends where they're like, hey,
oh, yeah,
let me show you this YouTube video, and you're like, oh, and like 30 seconds are funny, and then all of a sudden you look down at the timer and you're like, oh, this is 6 minutes long.
Yeah, and then you exit out of it. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's how I feel a movie with his character would be. That you're like, okay, it's great. There's some fun parts, and then it's like, oh, now I got to sit through an hour. I mean, one of the biggest complaints of that movie was way too long for what it was.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll agree with you in this point. Like, it was good knowing that it was a zombie film, and you're going in knowing what you get, and it's just going to be a little over the top by Zack Snyder, and you're going to get a lot of blurry scenes because that's what he likes. Like, it remind me of sometimes of like Justice League when like the curtains were flowing and there was a zombie behind it. I'm thinking, oh, it's Bizarro instead of Superman, and
right.
I was waiting for him to show up, but
right. Yeah, and the
I
thing
like
about
the colors. I will say this though: the opening credit scene is probably my third favorite of all time.
Do you know why? Because it was mine too.
Are you asking me why, or are you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm asking you why it was your favorite, because I'll get into why it was one of my favorites.
I liked how they introduced each character. I liked also how they did it where they were showing them hold pictures to like give them. It was giving backstory without having to give us a ton of backstory of these characters, knowing that the film doesn't need to be
right.
It was. I had high hopes when that came on because I'm thinking, okay, great. I'm not going to have to find out about all these people's deep, dark secrets and long dialogue and stuff.
Right.
And then I still got that in a movie, which pissed me off. Like that Batista scene at the end where he's crying and they're sitting there. I'm like, that could have been like 5 minutes, and they extended it out to like 10, like The Revenant. Right. They were like panning around the desert. And I'm like, dude, just kill him and be done with this. I'm over this scene. Yeah. So I liked that. I liked the music choice. And I liked like the action sequences of it. It reminded me of, because my favorite opening credit scene of all time, Top Gun's number one, just because of the song. Number two is Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yep.
With also Dave Bautista, where it's just going around and it's like fun to see Baby Groot, and stuff like that. So that reminded me of this. And I thought it was very fun and open, and it gave you some story without having to give you dialogue.
I'm happy you brought that up, because we didn't discuss this, but those are my two favorite opening scenes in movies too. Is Top Gun and Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2 or Version 2 or Part 2 or whatever it is. But I actually really like those, but this one was really good for me for similar reasons. I like that it offered quite a bit of a backstory. But I tell you, man, movies that offer a booby or a subi are really good for me. Okay, and we had naked zombies for 3 minutes with "Viva Las Vegas" by Elvis going on, and I thought that. But here's my problem is that you now they didn't have to show boobies through the whole movie, but you introduce something in the beginning of the movie that you never address at the end of the movie, right? So you're watching it by the end of the movie and you're like, well, whatever happened with this or whatever happened with that? And this movie had quite a bit of that. I felt like the way that it opened so high. The opening scene, I think if you take the first 10 minutes of that movie, it's phenomenal. I think it captured me in really, really well. But then the movie just made me, like you said with Katie, it made me just ask so many questions. Like, why are they doing this? Or why are they doing that? I mean, I think one of the worst characters, and I'm a huge fan of Sons of Anarchy, but one of the worst characters was Theo Rossi as the police officer or the little camp guard or whatever. Yeah, Shades from Luke Cage. So Theo Rossi, I think he's, in the things that I've seen him in, he is a great actor. In this movie, he was worthless. And I really, when I saw him, I was like, oh, okay, Theo Rossi's in this. Awesome. Let's kind of see where he's going. And he turns up being this kind of douchebag and potentially like this, abusive aggressor type person. And then all of a sudden he's just zombie food. And I'm like, oh, well, that was kind of a waste of a character. So
Theo Rossi to me, have you ever played the Gay Baby game?
No.
Do you know what the Gay Baby? So me and my wife invented this during movie time. So whenever you see an actor and it looks like a mix of two. So Theo Rossi is a gay baby between Jake Gyllenhaal and Casey Affleck.
Oh, I could see that.
And so that's all I thought. Because I'm not a Casey Affleck fan, but I'm a big Jake Gyllenhaal. And I just went, oh man, that's who it is. And I yelled that out. My wife laughed because we'll do that every now and then. You'll see it. You brought up a good point about the opening scene that I love too, and I don't know if you were aware of this. So there's a band in Vegas called Richard Cheese and Lounge Against the Machine.
No, I'm not aware of them.
So the guy who sang the Viva Las Vegas, it's Richard Cheese. He used to play at Sunset Station?
Uh-huh.
And he takes songs. I'm gonna send you some after this, but he takes songs like Nookie Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit. And he turns them into lounge music. Oh
my gosh!
And so it was funny. We're watching this, and I'm like, "That's Richard Cheese." And my wife's like, "Okay, what the hell's a Richard Cheese?" I go, "Oh, Richard Cheese, lounge machine." I explain it, and like it's one of those things. Like apparently, I'm the only person, or besides the travesty, that know who Richard Cheese in Las Vegas is, and I have his CD Toxicity. But it's one of those things. Like I was excited for that. Like because I like soundtracks, and I was just like, and I knew it right off the bat because his voice was very familiar, the style of music he does, and that was another thing that made the opening credit scene. It wasn't like they just went and they picked Viva Las Vegas, and they made a new iteration of it, but they didn't just go and pick a play track, from the 70s and hit play and go, let's just do this as the opening. Like they actually went out and got people to perform this song that makes sense from Vegas. That's Vegas style and also ridiculous. Because if you go to a Richard Cheese Lounge Against the Machine show, it's totally obnoxious. I mean, it's just crazy.
Right. Well,
but, I mean,
there's a couple things here though with the movie that I just want to touch on, and then we can get off this topic. But I guess that. The movie for me was an absolute letdown, and the reason why it was a letdown was for a couple reasons. Like the guy who played Scorpion in Mortal Kombat, I think his name was Tanaka. The character's name was Tanaka in this film. He has the casino. He's the owner of the casino, and he sends these people in to go and get the money out of the casino, but he wants them to break into the casino through the zombies. And then he wants them to break into the safe. And for anybody getting to the safe, it's booby trapped and basically they die, right? If they're not sending the zombies in as they did. Why doesn't the dude just give him the password? Like he owns the thing. Like so again, this movie kind of creates quite a bit of things for me as far as questions. And I don't feel like it really answered them for me. And I realize they're trying to set up this big world, I guess, around this movie, and Zack Snyder's trying to kind of tie it all in, but I kind of felt like as not to make this a comic book conversation, but I kind of felt like this was Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. It was way too long. There was quite a bit of questions. There was a Martha moment where you're talking about, the zombie named Zeus, and the baby and all this sort of stuff, and there's just a ton of questions with it, man. And I think if I'm gonna rate this, as obviously it was watchable, like it wasn't terrible. I didn't have to turn it off. I don't know that I'll ever see it again. I'll try to watch the spinoffs just to see if it tries to answer any questions for me. But other than that, I wasn't really impressed. What was your final take?
You brought up a good point. I'm going to bring up the point of the safe, right? And how there was so many questions and not answers. All I thought of, and I don't try to do this with movies because I know it can ruin it sometimes. Like, those people that go like, the argument like Indiana Jones was not needed in Indiana Jones.
Right.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. The movie's sort of done without him. Essentially, anybody that owns a safe, I do, and I'm from Vegas and I've been in casino safes. They're fireproof. Right. Mm-hmm. The things. How far underground?
I think it was like 7 floors underground or some weird amount. But regardless,
how the hell is that nuke gonna affect that safe?
The only thing. So great question, because the only thing that I can think of, because he was bitten somehow, right? So this was the Vanderho or Vandero or whatever the guy's name is. So he was locked into the safe. While the tech guy was getting eaten by the zombies.
Saved him, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he saved him. It was his hero moment. But he comes out of the safe. He walks however many miles to the nearest single wide trailer, finds a vehicle, drives to Utah, right?
Digs up some
and then he hands cash over to the airport to try to rent this private jet, and then while he's on the private jet, he notices he's bitten. So the only thing that I can think of is the radiation potentially stopped the effects of the bite.
But that's not my point. My whole point is, Brian, why didn't they just wait for the city to be nuked and then go in with no zombies?
Exactly. No, I completely agree with that too. Again, there's a lot more questions here that have to be answered because of the way that they did it. Like, if they would have created a sequel where he comes out after the nuke and he's good, he's safe, whatever, and now he's restarting life, okay, well now we can move forward on that. But
it would have been better. It would have been like the end of Alien when they found her like in the ship just floating. Like, if the movie would have just ended and then the sequel is it opens the safe and he's in there a zombie, but they don't know he's in there and he attacks somebody and then it spreads it all over again, right? That would have been a better thing. Now, I mean, I didn't really like the movie. It's very obvious. I'm not going to totally shit on it though, because I'll say this. If you like zombie movies and you're into this, you're gonna have a good time. It's like how I like I said, King Kong and Godzilla. Not a great storyline. You don't need a lot of storyline. If you're going into it going, I just want to see a bunch of zombies get their heads chopped off, a bunch of wild actors just have fun and stuff, you're gonna like this movie.
Right.
At that point, I would grade it higher. I just don't enjoy it, so I was already going in closed-minded, which is the stupidest way to watch a movie. That's on me. Like, I should not go into a movie already thinking I'm not going to like it. I should go in with, just like anything in life, go in with an open mind and try to enjoy it and have fun. There are times I go in with a closed mind and something totally, and I think I was hoping for it to make me go, holy crap, I really like this, and it never happened. So then I was getting even more and more mad because you're getting frustrated, going, I'm waiting for the good part and it never happens, or I'm waiting for non-stupid things to happen so I can enjoy this, and it never did. I would not grade this high, but I gotta counter that.
Like I gotta counter that because I watched it and I had zero hope in the movie. I hadn't heard anything about the movie. I just turned it on. I think I was scrolling through Facebook or something or Instagram or whatever social media thing, and somebody was saying that they watched it or shared a picture of the movie that was coming on, and so I just explored it and turned it on. And so, I had no hopes of the movie. It wasn't something that I really wanted to go into. But I have to tell you, even without having an expectation, even without trying to prepare myself to watch it, I wasn't satisfied. And again, the only thing that I can really equate it to is this was Zombieland meets Wish.com. Like you're gonna buy the Zombieland set and it's gonna be made out of like, cotton candy and you have to add water to it or something. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think that there's a lot that they could have done. I think the movie had a ton of potential. I think the movie was better than what it should have been, but it's worse than what it should have been, but it's better than what it was, if that makes sense.
That does. No, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And so I, but again, if you're looking for something that's entertaining, you want to watch it, you want to be sure to, just kind of lose yourself in it, and you don't really care if you're going to have all the answers by the end of it. I think it's a fun movie to watch. I mean, obviously the action sequences were good. I thought that some of the CGI was a little poor, but for the most part, it wasn't all too noticeable. Maybe you would have saw a little bit more flaws if you were in a movie theater. But I think, for sitting at home, watching the movie, streaming it on Netflix, I think it was decent. I didn't like it. I probably won't watch that particular movie again, but I think that there's a lot of people out there who would enjoy it.
Well, see, I watched it at home like you because you can stream it. But I finally got to do something, Brian, that I have not been able to do since last year.
Okay.
And that was go to the theaters and watch A Quiet Place 2 the other night.
So,
and, I mean, because we're in different states.
Right.
And
right.
There's different lockdowns. And it's a little more strict up here, up in the Pacific Northwest, that the theaters have essentially been closed down. Like yours opened, I believe, last year.
I think the theaters here opened last August. Now, there hasn't really been any movies to watch in the movie theaters here. I think I watched X-Men... oh gosh,
the Phoenix one, the really bad
no,
one?
Not that one. It was the one that was delayed over and over and over. About the kids, Young Mutants.
New Mutants.
New Mutants. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't prepared for that dialogue there. But New Mutants, I saw that in the movie theater, and it was, that movie was okay. But it was great to have the experience. It was great to go back into it. But there's not really been any movies that have been out. And until now with A Quiet Place. So you and I both saw this in the theater, but how was your experience in the movie theater?
I loved it. I mean, I went by myself, and I actually like to go to the movies by myself at time to time.
I do too.
It's enjoyable for me. I did not, the downsides, I'll give you these first. I didn't go to my regular theater, so I moved into a new house this year. And so I'm not even, the theater used to be literally a block from my old house. And that's where I had my own seat. Everybody sort of knew me there. The joke was if my friends went, they knew the seat that I would always get. This one, I went to an AMC theater, which used to be Cinetobi, which is a high-end theater. And I went there, and I had a reserved seat, and I was in the balcony, the 21 and older section, which I enjoy too because, no offense, teenagers suck. I'm that get off my lawn sort of thing. But the coolest part about going was I got my advance tickets, and I was already pumped up and excited going, wow, I'm going to go do something I haven't done in a long time that I really enjoy doing. Right. I mean, I might complain about people and theater etiquette. We can get into that another time, but I still like to go to the theater, for a lot of aspects. I like the popcorn, I like the soda, I like the nostalgia, I like the feel. Right. I like, to get my seat and previews, and I like everything about it. And it's just enjoyable for me. And the coolest part is when I was in there, there was a lot of people in there, and I was surprised. And everybody had the same reaction. Oh my God, this is the first movie I've went to since, whenever. And everybody was just so excited to be there and be happy to be around each other and to watch a movie. And it was a young crowd, so at first I'm thinking, oh God, this is going to be bad. Mm-hmm. They're going to talk. Especially with a movie like A Quiet Place too. Right. Because it's essentially
a quiet movie.
It's a quiet movie.
Right.
And I think the people that went were a lot like me, like actual moviegoers. Because there's a difference, that. There's moviegoers and there's people that go to the movies. Right. And everybody was quiet and all that. There was only one person I wanted to slap in the theater, and it was due to in every theater, this you get different trailers. The Top Gun 2 trailer came up. Mm-hmm. And another old man moment where I'm sitting there, and you know how people always do the thing at the end, I want to see that, or whatever. They make comments after the trailer plays, the quick ones until the next one comes on. And all of a sudden he goes, I've never seen the first one. And I wanted to get up, walk over, smack him in the face, and tell him to go home and watch it now. And he's not allowed to watch another movie until he sees the original Top Gun. But I mean, the theater experience was great. I mean, how was yours? You went to your normal theater, right?
Yeah, I actually went to my normal theater. I was in my normal seat. It was really, really nice. So while we live in different areas, I've been fortunate enough to be able to go to the movie theater a few times. I've watched some movies that have already been released, but are now being re-released, and just some different things. And through the pandemic, I felt very passionate with trying to support local businesses. And so whether that was local restaurants or eateries or whatever, when the movie theaters opened, I felt like I needed to go and see whatever movie it was, so that way they stay in business. I mean, you and I are huge fans of movies and movie theaters, and like you, I like to go to the movies by myself as well. So one of the things that I was very happy about with going to A Quiet Place last night was that not only was there actually a really good crowd there, like you. I mean, the theater was there were quite a bit of people there, but for the most part, everybody was respectful. There was one instance where somebody either had a phone notification or got a text message or whatever, and I think they pulled their phone out of their pocket, and so it lit up. But they didn't check it. They weren't on their phone. It wasn't that. So like they just kind of put it away, and I was happy that they just put it away. So it was nice being really respectful that way. But the funny part is that, of course, A Quiet Place is also about the end of the world, right? It's a dystopian future and all this sort of stuff. And so whether they're monsters, aliens, whatever you want to call them, in the beginning of the movie, when they first made themselves known, and I think they came out and they hit the bus, when Emily Blunt is driving with the kids in the car and they hit the bus, I think is when it first happened. There was the guy in front of me, and speaking of language differences, it looked like he was there with his family, and they were a Hispanic family. And all of a sudden, in the movie theater, I hear Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. He was so scared that he was. But that's the benefit of going to a movie theater, is you get to see people's reactions and all of that sort of stuff. So, again, kind of like with Army of the Dead. Tell me what you liked about A Quiet
Love
Place.
This movie.
Me too.
Loved
I'm so glad we agree on that.
This movie, and I'm gonna ask one question at the end of this, like which one did you like better, of course.
Okay.
But this movie had the best parts that I liked is, one, they don't treat the audience like they don't do what Hollywood does sometimes and dumb it down so much or have to explain like, I'm one of those people, I don't need everything explained.
Right.
And the perfect example of it is, I'm just going to have a little side note here, but you know the show Lost, right?
Yes.
There was the black smoke monster. And I remember when I found it, I was like, I want to know what it is, but I don't, because I know as soon as they tell me it's going to suck.
Right.
Like, I want to know the aliens, demons, monsters, whatever you want to call them, right? Where they come from, but I also don't care. Like, I you know what I mean? Like,
it's
did
not
the
essential.
Openings. Yeah, and heads up, spoilers, like we're gonna say, but there's like the fire in the sky, and you're thinking, okay,
Yeah.
they're coming from there. It's obvious, but it's not like they're like, they didn't do what most Hollywood movies would do, is like somewhere in the point of the movie, like the end or something, make it seem like, oh, there's a spaceship up there, and that's
right.
And they have to explain where they came, or some scientist figured it out. Like, they were like, that's not, and that's why I think John Krasinski needs to make more movies. My God. He is good.
I want to interrupt you right there, and I really want to just go along that line, because I wholeheartely believe that John Krasinski needs to make more movies. We talked about an Army of the Dead with Zack Snyder and how he does the out of focus frames and the slow motion, and you see it in all of his movies. Basically, he's got a certain type of cinematography, but the one thing that he also has is he has an elongated storyline that really could be condensed and more concise. And what I liked about John Krasinski with A Quiet Place, and now A Quiet Place 2, is he made it very simple. It was very digestible for the audience to understand what is going on with the circumstances around the protagonist and the family. And also, like you said, there were certain questions that we have. What are these beings? Where are they from? All this sort of stuff. But none of that mattered in the whole storyline. And even going into A Quiet Place 2, the one thing that just blew my mind, and it was so surprising in such a good way, is how John Krasinski was able to go from A Quiet Place, where you introduce where his youngest son dies, and then you speed it up, and now you have the family where she's now pregnant with a baby, and going through all of that where you can't make any noise, right? To A Quiet Place 2, and now John Krasinski's dead, and all this sort of stuff. It was so simple in the storyline, like you really bond with the characters. And I thought the storytelling aspect and the way that the story was told with all of the characters involved, I thought was beautiful. And when I walked out of this movie last night, I just thought to myself, that's a damn good movie. And John Krasinski needs to make more of those.
Well, because he made it seamless.
Right.
It didn't feel like a sequel where, one, it took too long to happen. I mean, the only thing that happened is they made us wait for it to be released. This was supposed to be released a long while ago.
It was actually supposed to be a year ago. Yeah.
Right. And he even said, like, him and Emily Blunt came out and said, we're not going to release this till people can actually go and enjoy it. And I think that's why so many people clamored to it, because this was a movie we want to see. But he made it seamless to where you went and, like, they continued and they went and backtracked day one, and you got to see more of it. And then they built on it. But he also made characters that were relatable.
Right.
That you cared about.
Right.
And even if you didn't care about, or you did, like, you might have had a hateful moment for him, and, like, there was so many questions. But the main thing was, I was on the edge of my seat this whole movie. And being a dad especially.
Yes.
There were a lot of scenes where I'm sitting there going, what would I do in this moment? I know what I would do in this moment as of my integrity of myself.
Right.
But going, holy crap. And like just the scene where the baby might be suffocating.
Yes.
And the son's in there, and you're like,
yes.
and I don't know, were you the same way as me? There's some point you're sort of getting pissed off at that son, and you don't know why you're pissed off at him, because you understand he needs to survive too.
You're getting anxious, yeah. Like you have that protective moment as a dad. Like, what are you doing? Stop sucking on the oxygen. Like,
right.
Yeah,
like, you don't do that. But
absolutely.
But also, you as a person, you need to survive, because also if he doesn't survive, how's the baby survive? Right. So it's that whole chicken and the egg thing. But the other thing is he made every scene, like that whole suspense build up. I liked how it was bouncing between three scenes.
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. So continue that, and then I've got some more to talk about that.
And it's like you have a suspenseful moment, and then here's another suspenseful moment, and here's another.
Pause real quick.
Moment.
So for the audience, of course, this is a spoiler. You've got three suspenseful moments. So they introduce a new character, Emmett, who's played by. Is it Cillian Murphy?
Cillian Murphy, who was Scarecrow in
he was Scarecrow in Batman Begins, and also The Dark Knight. He's also in Peaky Blinders, and I have to tell you, man, every character he's ever played, I really haven't liked the character. Is it
because I'm gonna interrupt you? Is it because his plastic face?
He
looks like a doll. He does.
But I think the first time I saw him was actually in Batman Begins, and then he was also in the other. So I tried to watch Peaky Blinders. I really couldn't get into it, but he has that punchable face. There's just people who have a punchable face. But I have to tell you, originally in this movie, I didn't like the character, but he took off with the daughter. Okay, and the daughter who's deaf, I think her name is Reagan.
Millicent Simmons.
Yes,
but in real life, yeah.
Right, and so her whole goal was to finish her dad's work, right? And so she took off out of this safe space, and Emmett's role is to go and find her and bring her back. For Emily Blunt's character, who requested him to do that, and so they're going off on this mission to go and do this. Subsequently, the son, I think his name is Marcus in the movie. The son gets his leg caught in a bear trap, and it's now at risk of being infected, right? And so Emily Blunt's character goes back into town to go and get medicine and first aid for him, so that way she can tend to him. However, while she's doing that, he's also watching the baby. And so now you've got these three different storylines. And what I loved about these three different storylines is all three of them start to match up. And they're not finishing a storyline. They're moving the storylines forward together, where there's this big climax where all three people are threatened by whatever the monster or being or whatever it is. And that to me was a beautiful, absolutely magnificent suspense, the way that it was directed, the way the storyline came together right there. For me in the audience, and tell me, Jake, if you agree, for me, that was beauty. I mean, I had a smile from ear to ear, but I was also just worried out of my seat.
Well, Hollywood typically would do it where you have a climactic part, it ends, and then like for example, like the mom might shoot the alien, and then they're both laying on the floor and they're breathing heavy, and then it would go to the next scene, and then it would just build the crescendo again, right? This was all building and then one final giant crescendo. I mean, there were moments that ended and got big and stuff, and but the other thing is I mean, John Krasinski makes intelligent decisions in this movie, and one, it starts with casting, right?
Yes, and
it's not because his wife. I mean, I don't think Emily Blunt can do wrong. I mean.
No,
that
she's
is
perfect.
The hottest post-apocalyptic woman I've ever.
I'll tell you what.
I am just
there's not a woman on this earth that can rock a pair of red sweats like she could. It was amazing.
No, so I mean, but how he casted Millicent, right?
Yep.
She's actually deaf. I don't know if you know this, but she went deaf at 12 months old due to a drug overdose. I was doing, me, I do research after the movies, and and I think that's smart. I mean, it's sort of like when we were talking last week about Peanut Butter Falcon. Like sometimes you just pick a character that's actually going to be able to play that instead of trying to get somebody to play that, and it fits.
Right.
But also, her acting's phenomenal. I mean, the facial expressions she has, and the nuances in scenes, and the way she could get people to speak without speaking, I think is a testament to her acting, which is like a huge moment when you can get people to speak with their eyes,
right,
for a camera, is one of the best things in scenes. Because I mean that I like quiet, slow movies. I don't think you need to fill every moment with breath and speech, and there are movies that are meant for that. And of course this one's not, but John Krasinski doesn't make this movie all just about the monsters. And I'm sure Hollywood probably wanted him to, you need to show more monsters. You need to make this about that. And it's like, no, this is about like the journey through this, like how you would get through this, like what, and it was almost like a choose your own adventure book where you're sitting there going, you're questioning yourself the whole movie, which is what good movies do. They make you think inward of what would I do if I was in this situation. Well, my most favorite part of the movie was, how every film you get that, especially movies like this that are sort of drudge and dark, and there's moments that are just everything's just crap. When the dock people get totally mass murdered, attacked,
I feel like you're
the revenge.
Oh, I feel like you're taking your words from me here, because that's exactly what I was going to say. But go ahead and continue.
But I mean, I'm just sitting there just so happy, like going, yeah, I want that guy to die. Oh, thank God he's dead. Like, it was one of those like relieving moments.
Right.
And and you know this about me. I am not a person, I do not like happy endings in movies. I like it to be like real life and just gritty. Sure. I mean, that's why, have you ever seen The Road or read the book The Road?
No, I have not.
So the ending just, you'll have to watch it and then we'll come back, but it's just a dark ending, and you don't really know. It's very open, and I like open-ended endings, or like endings that are just down. That's why Empire is the best Star Wars. And this was, this is, an opposite, and I actually enjoyed that, and I find that surprising. I like to be surprised when I'm at the movies.
Well, so I go ahead, finish up that, and
I mean, I just at the end of it, I was just sitting there like grinning, like this was a great film, and it didn't do the final part of it. It didn't do the stupid thing of going, we know there's going to be another one. Like, because when you ended A Quiet Place, did you think, like he even said in an interview, John Krasinski, he didn't think there would be a sequel. And it didn't need a sequel. I mean, I'm glad they made it.
Let me go back to the doc people, and then I'll answer that question for you. So one of the things that I liked about this, and obviously there was there was a dozen people or so on the dock, maybe eight, 9 to somewhere in there. And it created this really suspenseful moment where you really didn't know what was going to happen. Right. And they put the netting on Cillian's character, Emmett. And, there's a whole ton of stuff. What I loved about this was really like threefold. Okay. In the beginning of the movie, when they're at the baseball scene with John Krasinski, and John Krasinski is speaking sign language to his daughter. Cillian is a friend of their family, also sitting there watching baseball. And he doesn't know how to speak sign language. And one of the things that he does is, how do you say dive? Because he's trying to tell John Krasinski's son to dive to the plate. I believe is what the circumstance was.
Yeah, that's it.
And so she showed him how to dive, and basically you put your two hands in front of you and you make the diving motion with your hands, and that was the thing. And at this particular point in the movie, an hour and a half later, or whatever the time period was, he tells her to dive. He remembers that conversation from however many years ago in the storyline and tells her to dive, and becomes, that's like his hero moment, right? When he takes over. But I love the fact that we knew nothing about those people. I love the fact that all of the people died that were trying to harm them in that way. And we never questioned it. There was never one thing to question about it.
I love the fact that you brought up the one thing I hated about that movie.
What, the diving thing?
I hate the dive thing. It reminded me of the movie Signs. Like, everything was so coincidental happenstance just pisses me off in Hollywood films. And I understand it's like, oh, like, that's why he learned how to say dive, and look, it came true. It's like, I don't know, that's the only thing I was sitting there going, really?
I think for me as a movie fan, if you leave doors open, at least tell me that there's close the door. If you're going to finish the storyline, close the door. And so
I looked at it, though, when she was teaching him dive, that it was going to lead more to him, like, when the enunciate thing and stuff came up, that it was going to be more about it was showing that he was able to learn from her how to have a little bit of a conversation, not, oh, he's actually going to tell her to dive later. Well, that's my issue.
So you and I can disagree on that one, because I thought it was a great point to the movie, and just in the same breath that when Emily Blunt left the gun at the end of the movie, when she left it on the stand, and they actually achieved the conquest of putting the sound through the microphones, which are now blasting through the radios, that startle the monsters or whatever they are, that the son was actually able to grab the gun and then shoot it. And here's why I like stuff like that. It's because if you just write a gun in there as a writer of a movie, and you just say he's already holding the gun, I can get that to a certain extent, but what you're doing as a writer is you're really setting up where you can tie this story together. And I thought that that's beautiful. Now, you're obviously going to disagree with me on that one.
Not with the gun scene, because the gun scene, Brian, that's happening in a moment. I'm talking about the one I don't like, where you wrote it and it's the beginning of the film,
dive, yeah,
464 days earlier, and that, okay.
No, now, I get what you're saying, but I think you're stupid for saying it, first and foremost. But here's the thing: if a guy doesn't know sign language, as in this circumstance, how is he going to tell her to dive if he doesn't know sign language? They made it a point for him not to know sign language, and that's kind of where I'm saying this. Like, they removed any barriers that could have been there from the audience to say, hey, wait, how does he know sign language? Right? And so I think that that's where they tied it up okay. And I like their relationship toward the end of it. I thought it was really good. But I kind of want to touch on a couple more things here with A Quiet Place. I liked that the monsters couldn't swim, and I thought that was unique. Obviously, that kind of explains why they're not moving from continent to continent, because in the beginning, I think they were in like Shanghai or someplace like that. And so, that's kind of explains why there's not this overabundance of monsters or whatever the creature is. And I also like the fact that there was a sliver of normalcy on that island. And one of the things that I thought was fantastic is, obviously, we in real life have gone through this pandemic, and we still have some barriers with the pandemic and everything else. But I thought that having a shred of normalcy in a post-apocalyptic storyline was almost like that sliver where you and I both enjoyed all of the people's conversations of saying, I'm so happy we're back in the theater. Like, both of those two, both the story of seeing that sliver of normalcy and us in real life being in the movie theater having that experience, really kind of completed the movie for me. As far as in that scenario, I thought it was good how they wrapped it up. I think that they could do a sequel potentially if they really wanted to do a sequel. But if you want to put a bow on it and call it done, I think it's perfect.
I think John Krasinski's put a bow on it. I don't think Hollywood will,
right,
which is sad.
Right.
But I mean, to your point about the monsters not swimming, I'm sorry, I disagree with you again because the White Walkers couldn't swim. You always have to make something in a monster film, Brian, that is capable for the humans to actually have a fighting chance.
No, I completely agree with you.
And so, I mean, I did enjoy that they couldn't swim, but I'm also just thinking, like, that to me was just like, of course they can't, because you know, they're so powerful. You can't even shoot them unless their whole face opens up and there's an ear showing, and you know, but they're blind. But then again, they're not, because you can't make any noise because they just chase you down. And the one question I was having though was like, why are they killing all these people? Because are they actually eating them, or are they just pissed off? Like,
well, and again, you know, you don't really know the motive, right, of these creatures.
I mean, they're just aliens, but there was a point I'm sitting there watching it going, are they actually hunting us for food, or is it just like are these like the aliens from like Predator that got rabies and they just let them go because they're just pissed off running around?
Right.
I mean, back to your point though about normalcy, I did find this funny, like an odd little thing, and I was thinking of it because I don't remember the exact number of days in the movie, if it was 444 or 460. But little side note, it's been 440 days since the actual shutdown.
Right.
So I found that just coincidentally
well, and a little
odd.
bit more in certain states too, because certain states shut down before others.
So I just found that, like, did they also release it? I know things were opening up, but you know what I mean? How like sometimes things just fall in your lap like that. Like you could say a stat like that. I found that interesting.
I did too.
But the other thing was it really got me thinking as a father, and I'm not trying to get too political here or too serious. And usually that's this is your forte, Brian, but I'm going to try it. It really got me thinking of I have a 3-year-old right now. I have a 12-year-old and I have a 7-month-old. Mm-hmm. And my 3-year-old has to wear a mask everywhere.
Right.
And I mean, to her, it's normal. Like she's just used to it now. And to me, it's a little sad. I mean, I get it. I understand why. I'm not like being one of those people like. But it made
You're not being Jake the Karen here.
No, but during this movie, all I was thinking was these parents had to teach their kids how to grow up. And then I was thinking of the baby, right? That's in the box that they're... Mm-hmm. And, I mean, you know, if the monsters die, this baby's going to grow up thinking that's just normal.
Right.
And I'm thinking, like, you know, until this all ends, like, that's sort of what I'm going through right now. And that was very relatable to me going, you know, I have a kid who has to wear a mask everywhere. She doesn't think a big deal of it, and it's fine. But like, you know, we're having to like sidestep and think of ways to do things that, you know, are out of our comfort zone and not normal.
Right.
And that was I think the most relatable thing being a parent in this movie is just going through a situation like we've done over the last year. And I'm not saying this isn't close to A Quiet Place 2. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to say they're on the same level.
Right.
But they're on the same level of having to raise children and adapt. Mm-hmm. And in their mind, it's normal, and to you know it's not, but just making it normal.
Right.
And being that parent to just be like, we'll get through this. Here's how we will. And that, I think, was the most eye-opening moment for me of this movie, of just realizing, like, you know, that's what I felt going through that. And that I like, as I said, relating to movies and being able to think about it. And, you know, I'm going to get off my soapbox here, but I mean, I don't know. That's how I felt. And I like stuff like that.
I completely agree with you. I thought that it wasn't overt. It wasn't in our face. There was, you know, the thing that I like, and you and I talk about this quite frequently, and as for people that are, you know, just getting to know Jake or getting to know me, you know, Jake and I tried not to talk a whole lot of politics, especially when we're talking sports, entertainment, those types of things, because, you know, entertainment, sports, music, books, video games, whatever it might be, is our escape from the normal, you know, and the world can be kind of a divisive place when you start talking politics and when you start doing that, and it's hard to find entertainment if it's completely saturated with the topics that are affecting us now. And so I agree with you, because that was also my thought too, is you know, these kids, because they are still kids, all three of them. You know, you've got the teenage girl, you've got the preteen or teenage boy, and then you've got the baby. They're all growing up in this dystopian future where they're having to adapt and they're having to find new things to do. It's almost like the movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, where his daughter's now having to live in this life and his son's now having to live in this life, relating that back to A Quiet Place. They're having to adapt to the circumstances, and they're just having to survive. And I think that we, as a society, are coming out of it more or less now, in that space. I mean, obviously movie theaters are open and things are starting to open. But I agree with you as a dad. As a dad, I really related to the relationship between John Krasinski's character and his daughter. And the reason why I relate to that is because I'm a dad of an 18-year-old daughter. And, those teenage years are kind of tough. Teenage girls tend to get opinionated. They tend to get emotional in different ways. And as a dad, you don't quite understand it because you haven't gone through the emotions and you don't really know, the things that she's being affected by, or even inflicted by, because you're not walking in her shoes and you've never experienced it as a girl. And I thought the relationship between John Krasinski and his daughter was so magnificently beautiful in this movie, and the fact that his daughter adored her dad made the world for me. That for me as a dad was something that was absolutely impactful. And hats off to John Krasinski. This man needs to make more movies. I don't care who he makes them with. He needs to get back into it. He's found his calling, and I hope that he continues to do this, because not only was the story fantastic, the movie was fantastic, and overall, Jake, I think both you and I will agree that the entire experience of being able to watch this last night was fantastic too.
Exactly. Final question for you, and then you can put a bow on this too, but which one's better?
See, so I called a friend of mine last night to talk with him and his wife about encouraging them to go see this. And they asked me which one's better. And I don't know that I can answer that. And I'm not trying to get out of the question here. I liked A Quiet Place because I thought the storyline was absolutely unique. There wasn't something that was like it, at least that I could think of off the top of my head. And at the time that I saw it, there wasn't really anything that I thought was like it either. And so I thought the movie was great. I thought the storyline was great. The characters were awesome. The amount of things in the movie, including characters or MacGuffins or whatever, was small. So it was very digestible. And going into A Quiet Place 2, there's more characters that are involved in it, but really the storyline's still centered around a handful of people. I like them equally. And I'm not trying to cop out your question. But I think that if I'm talking about experience and like excitement and wow, that was a great film walking away, I had that with A Quiet Place, and I had that with A Quiet Place too. And if I'm talking about the storyline, I enjoyed both of them. I don't know that I can answer that question right now, and that might be one that I have to revisit after rewatching A Quiet Place 2 a couple more times, and maybe even watching A Quiet Place a couple more times and trying to figure that one out. So I'm really trying to give you an answer on that. I'm not trying to cop out on that. But I really like both of them, and I like both of them a lot. It's one of my favorite movies in this genre. So let me turn it on to you. Which one do you think is better?
The first one.
You like the first one, and why?
I
like how I went on this dissertation. I went on this dissertation, and you're just like, oh, the first one.
I already know. Well, there's a few reasons. One, the funny thing was so my wife was pregnant during the first one, so it was very relatable in that way. And now the second one, we have a baby boy at home, so It's very relatable in that. There's a few reasons, though. It actually goes into my theory of two, because I don't know if you remember, but when A Quiet Place was out, so was another movie, Bird Box.
Oh, yes.
That was similar and different. And so to me, that it falls into my theory that we talked about last week. I enjoyed that, but I also I thought A Quiet Place was better than Bird Box. Not that Bird Box was bad, but I liked how centered the story was. Like I said, I like both movies, but when you start to expand too much, you introduce a lot of characters. Like I love, and I can't remember his name right now. I call him Digimon, but the black gentleman who's in Gladiator, and he was the guy on the island of A Quiet Place 2. Helped out and drove the car. It's Digimon. I can't say his name. It's DJIMON or something, but Digimon as I call him. But he's a great character, but it gets to a point where I like concise and But in the opening scene where the son dies in the first one is probably one of my favorite scenes because
that was really
it's
good.
one of those like a holy crap
That set the
moments.
tone. Yeah.
And you're just like, this movie's going to be, and that was during a time, I will say, during that time, a lot of movies were doing that and trying to throw us off.
Right.
Like killing off main characters stuff. That's like a newer thing, you know, like in our generation, like you don't need to hold on to characters. Like you can kill a character off in 5 seconds. Like Godzilla did the same thing with what's his name, Bill Cranston. They
Nobody
killed him
cares
off
about Godzilla.
Well, I'm just saying, like Bill Cranston's in the movie, everybody's excited, and then you find out he's dead in the first 10 minutes, and you're like, oh, there he goes, and you're like, well, what now, right? And that's how our generation's about that. Back in the day, they wouldn't do that in the 80s or the 90s.
Right.
You wouldn't kill off a huge star in a movie. You'd let them be in the movie as long as they possibly can.
Right.
I like the first one better. I mean, they're both amazing. I'm not crapping on the sequel. If I chose, of course, I'm going to go with the original one, in my opinion. But that's about it. I mean, I think I would highly recommend it to anybody who wants to see it. I would highly recommend going to the theater and supporting the theater and seeing it. It is an experience for that, especially because, like I said, I mean, and maybe hopefully you don't get those jerks that are talking during it, but I think people, when it's something super quiet too, that's another John Krasinski nod there, is that people pay attention. And
they do.
I mean, that's what I got on the films, though. I mean, I liked it way better than Army of the Dead. I'll say.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree. I 100% agree. So, so I want to wrap it up real quick, and I just want to take a minute and thank everybody who has supported our podcast so far. Both Jake and I have received quite a bit of calls, text messages, messages through social media, different things like that, giving us feedback, and also critiques, and we've really appreciated it. And so we just want to thank everybody who's again supported our new venture here. Be sure to follow the Bleach Bros podcast on all of our socials at Bleach Bros Pod. We're going to have some great content continuing to go through and coming out. Weekly episodes will come out Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And also, our podcast is now live on many of your favorite podcast apps. And so go out, subscribe, make sure to take a look at them, listen to our episodes. Of course, as you get further back in our catalog, understand we're continually trying to improve the content that we're putting out and also the quality of it. And we're also still trying to get on some other podcast apps. So if we're not on your favorite app, go ahead and check out some other apps. But make sure to like our podcast, subscribe, share it, and tell your friends. So with that, Jake, what do you got for me?
As always, thanks for the dirty talk, and come back and get sanitized.